Well, I'm getting married to the king, and you're all invited. I'm trying to decide on the dress. Now, what do you think about this? It's simple yet elegant. What do you think? You're all invited, so come join me. God bless you, and welcome back to Heart Ministry Radio Network and the Doors to Your Heart. I am your host, Brenda Divers. And again, I'm always so grateful that you were able to spend this time with us. We're dancing in the desert. Tonight, we're going to talk about Esther, Queen Esther. And there are 10 chapters in the book of Esther, and there's no way that we're going to go through all of that. They're just particular things that we're going to pick from them and do a more exhaustive study at another time. Our theme tonight is that God is present in our circumstances, whether we feel Him or not. God is always present in our circumstances, whether we feel Him or not. So our story starts off, Esther 1, with King Xerxes, a very powerful king. And he declared a feast of 180 days and invited all his subjects to eat and drink. And if you can imagine 180 days of eating and drinking, how he was at that time. So towards the end, he, called his eunuchs and nobles to send to Queen Vashti, that was the queen at the time, and to bring her so she could parade her beauty in front of his nobles. So she refused to be humiliated. And she said, I'm not coming. So the king was in a quandary. What was he going to do? So he, got his royals and the wise men together who knew the times and knew the laws. And they said, King, if you don't do something about this, then the women will not obey their husbands. They'll say that Queen Vashti got away with this and we don't have to obey our husbands. So they had to pull a law in place that, and women, again, we are not going to go through this today, but this is what happened during the times. And we thank God now that He gives us such liberty. He gives us such grace, and we don't have to be under this type of rule. So thank God for that. So there was a rule in place stating that women had to, obey their husbands and so forth. So Queen Vashti was removed from her throne because of her refusal. So there was a vacancy. So again, there was a royal decree that all the beautiful maidens be brought to the palace and under the care of the eunuch. So in chapter 2 of Esther, we read that in verse 7, we're just going to read verse 7, and it says, and he brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father or mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, he took her to her own. So Esther starts out in this story in a desert experience. Her parents had died, but thanks be to God, her cousin Mordecai took her and adopted her as his own and raised her. So again, it was a royal decree that all the maidens come to the palace and be put in the care of the eunuchs. And Esther was given favor from the start. She was put in the best housing. She had 7 maidens, or she had her own glam squad. She had a special diet, and Mordecai told her not to reveal who she was or her lineage, that she was a Jew. So again, as the story goes, Esther was chosen as queen of Persia. And Esther is Persian, right? So there always is a villain, right? So in chapter 3, we see Haman. And Haman was promoted by the king, so he had royal status. And as he walked through the streets, people would bow to him. And and everyone bowed except Mordecai. And that enraged him. So what he did was he investigated who Mordecai was and his lineage and so forth, and found out that he was a Jew. And he went to the king and told him that there was a certain people who didn't obey their laws, and that he should do something. He should exterminate them. So the king, he'd offered him all these talents of silver and so forth, and the king didn't know. So he said, okay, take my royal my ring and seal it. So it went out through the land that within a year's time or so that all the Jews would be slaughtered, just because that one man would not bow. You know what pride does? Pride does that, doesn't it? It inflames you, and that's what it did to Haman. So again, a decree went out in a year's time that the Jews would be slaughtered, and they were law-abiding citizens, right? So Mordecai put on sackcloth and ashes and went before the palace and walked, trying to get Queen Esther's attention. And he finally got her attention and told her what was going on. And he wanted her, certainly to go before the king and tell him what was happening. And she said, if I go before the king and he hasn't summoned me, if he hasn't put out his golden staff, then I could be killed. But Mordecai reminded her of who she was, and that certainly we know the scripture that God has put you there for such a time as this. But he said to her, deliverance was going to come. If it wasn't by her hand, it was going to come. And I love that part of it. I never really spent time in that he knew deliverance was going to come. We know God is going to show up for us. We don't know how he's going to show up, but if we know our God, we know he's going to show up for us. But he said, if it comes by your hand or not, we will be delivered. But if it does, you yourself she would perish, because they would find out that she was a Jew. And he said, certainly that scripture, you were put in this place for such a time as this. So she said to him, gather the people, have them fast for 3 days for us, and myself and my maidens will fast, and I will go before the king. And if I perish, I perish. So I love the strength in Esther. She didn't know what would happen to her. And again, this interesting thing, many people say you don't hear God per se, or you don't hear prayer per se in the book of Esther. But God is present in each and every verse of scripture. He's present in every circumstance, right? So she said, fast for me 3 days, eat nor drink, and I will do the same. And I will go before the king, and if I perish, I perish. We're going to take a quick break and come right back. This is so exciting. Don't go anywhere.
Hey everybody, this is Pastor Ken, and this is my wife Brenda, and we are the co-owners of Heart Ministry Radio Network, and we want to thank you for tuning in.
We are an internet radio station that streams the best in gospel music 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We also have a wonderful host of live and pre-recorded shows to open the doors to your heart.
Thank you, and God bless you.
God bless you all.
Tune in to heartministryradio.com.
And don't forget to download our fabulous app on all of your mobile devices. Welcome back to Heart Ministry Radio Network and the Doors to Your Heart. We are dancing in the desert, and we are talking about Esther tonight. So we left off with Esther making her proclamation that she was going to go before the king, and if she perished, she would perish. So we're in chapter 5 now, and so she puts on her robe, her royal robe, and goes and stands before the king. And she found favor, it says in in verse 2. And he holds out his scepter. And she approaches. And he said, what can I do for you? He loved Esther, right? He said, what can I do for you? Ask me anything up to half of the kingdom. Whatever you want, up to half of my kingdom. And she said, well, if it please the king, I would like to throw a banquet for you and Haman, right? And so it was so. She threw the banquet, and Haman was so excited. He was so excited. And he went home, and he told his wife that he was going to a banquet with the king and the queen. And, you know, again, he was so excited. So his wife said, you know what you should do? You should build this huge gallows to hang Mordecai. You know, you're going to be elevated, you know, and you should build this huge gallows. And that's what they did. So all night they're building this gallows in their courtyard. So they have the banquet, and, you know, the king says, what do you want, Esther? What can I do for you? And she said, if it please the king, I would want you to come back tomorrow. So she didn't tell him what she wanted. She said, I just want you to come back tomorrow with you and Haman for another banquet. So the king says, okay. So, and again, this is God's timing, right? She could have told him the first time what she wanted, but she said, come back tomorrow. She had to be led of God to do this, right? So he says, okay. And again, Haman is excited. And so the night came, and the king could not sleep. He could not sleep. So he called to have a book read to him. And of course, he doesn't read his own book, so it was read to him. And as they were reading, I guess the, what's going on in the kingdom and all of that. And certainly, I guess they needed something boring, something boring to make him go to sleep. So they were reading the accounts and what was going on in the kingdom. And it came to one of the notes, and it said that Mordecai stopped an assassination of the king. So he was very instrumental in stopping an assassination. And the king said, basically, how come he didn't hear about it? So he wanted to do something for the man who stopped his assassination. So, of course, Haman gets up in the morning, and he's right there waiting for the king to call him in. And the king says to him, Haman, what would you do for someone who stopped an assassination of the king? What would you do for such a man, right? Or for someone who did something wonderful in the kingdom? What would you do for such a man? And Haman, of course, thought he was talking about him. And he said, I would put him on a royal robe and put him on the king's stallion and parade him through the streets, and all of that, and all this pomp and circumstance. And he was so excited. And the king said, do that for Mordecai. Because he was the one who thwarted that assassination attempt. And Haman was livid. He thought it was talking about himself, and this was going to happen to him. So I want you to take heart when it seems like, evildoers are getting the upper hand, or, maybe even at work, your manager is just so evil and so mean. They treat you, and everything you do is wrong, and they're plotting to do this and plotting to do that. Nothing can touch you. Nothing can touch you before it goes through the hand of God. God's got your back. He always knows what he has in place for us. Although we can't see the second steps, God sees way in the future. So take heart tonight when evil is coming against you. It's like you can't get a break. Know that God is present in every circumstance, whether we feel him or not. He promised never to leave us or forsake us, right? There is an angel camped round about us, right? So we have to trust our God regardless of what things look like, right? Because the things that are seen are temporal, right? And we know God knows. God knows everything. Our life has already been written. There's nothing that's going to surprise God. He wasn't in this chapter kind of figure out what he was going to do. he gave all the instruction, right? So Haman thought that he was going to kill the Jews, right? Wipe them out based on Mordecai not bowing to him. But, okay, here we go. So he had to lead Mordecai through the streets and pronouncing him, right? He was so humiliated. And he ran home to his wife. And instead of her, I guess, encouraging him, she said, well, you just need to, just put it, you just need to quit. You just need to go somewhere and be defeated. Instead of her she encouraged him to build the gallows. But because it didn't work out, she just said, I don't have anything for you, basically. So he, while he was talking to her and so forth, they called him to go to the feast. And the king said to Esther, what can I do for you? Ask anything, up to half of the kingdom. And she told him the plot that Haman had against her people. And he was furious. The king jumped up and went to the courtyard, right? And this is the interesting part. As the king went out to the courtyard, Haman fell on the couch that Queen Esther was reclined in to beg for his life. The king walks in at the time, and it looks like he's assaulting her. And he said, will you assault the queen right here? And soon as he said that, they covered his face and took him out. And he was hung on the gallows that he erected for Mordecai. And the story goes on, and we'll talk about that another time. But I just wanted to impress on you that God is present in what? Every circumstance, whether we feel him or not. Do you see how this thing played out? There were little steps, weren't there? But God has orchestrated it all. He was in it all. We have to give our lives over to God and know that he knows. He knows when you're in that desert circumstance. He knows when you are set apart for this pruning process. He knows. He knows. And he's doing it so what? We could be more fruitful. He wants you to trust him. And I tell you, it would be difficult if you didn't know your God to trust him in these circumstances. But Mordecai said to Esther, that part struck my heart. If you don't do anything, God's going to bring deliverance by another source. He was already secure on what God was going to do. I always skipped over that, but that touched my heart so. If you don't do it, God's going to do it another way. We have to be confident in our God that he has everything under control. Esther started as an orphan, wound up as a queen, saving her people. And again, the story goes on. We'll talk about it another time. But again, I just wanted to stress tonight that regardless of what it looks like, God has you. He knows. He already knows. Trust your Father. Trust your Father. Know that he has everything under control. Although it doesn't look like it, it may not smell like it, feel like it, but he has it. And that's when trust comes in. The word says, whatever is not of faith is sin. Isn't that something? Whatever is not of faith is sin. So we want to walk in faith tonight. Tell your Father how you're feeling. He already knows. But pray to your Father. Let him know what you're experiencing, how your heart feels tonight. And I promise you, he will direct your paths. Thank you for tuning in again to Heart Ministry Radio Network and the Doors to Your Heart. That's our time. I loved going through this. Again, we're going to do an exhaustive study, chapter by chapter, at another time. But there were just some key points that we want to pick out here tonight, that God is present, whether we feel him or not. So join us here often at heartministryradio.com. Go to our HMN TV page and you can see this under Dancing in the Desert. And again, we're just so grateful that you take the time to spend it with us. God bless you.